So today we're talking about a book that is helping a lot of business owners. So if you're trying to understand your numbers and you're trying to understand that part of your business, here's a great book that you can dive into. And today I'm going to talk about that book. I'm going to talk about what's good about it. I'm going to talk about actually how to get the best out of it if you plan on reading it. So stay tuned. So this is a book that a lot of people have been reading, and I've heard a lot of people talk about it. So I picked up the book and I read it myself, and I think that overall this is a good book. I mean, overall this book has a lot of great insights in it and has a lot of great concepts. I mean, it is for someone who's wanting to understand the financial side of their business. If finance and accounting isn't your background, this could be a great book to help you start really understanding that part of your business, because that part of your business is very, very important. So we're going to talk a little bit more in detail about it. But before we do that, just to give you a little bit of context on my background. My background is accounting and finance. Like, I went to school, I studied that, ever since I graduated in the early 2000s. I've been working in finance and accounting, and I also lead my own accounting firm. I'm a 40 under 40 CPA. My firm has been recognized in the New York Times for the work that we do. And I lead several different shows and podcasts talking about finance and making finance simple. So that's my background. Now, when I came into reading the book, there was a couple of things that I noticed about the book. Now, the first thing I will say is the book, I think, does a good job of introducing you to some concepts. So there are some great things about the book. There are some weaknesses about the book, and I'll explain that a little bit more. But for the first one to say is, I think the book does a really good job of talking about the topic of compensation strategy. Because one of the challenges that a lot of business owners have is they start a business and they never seem to pay themselves. And they never build their business in a way that allows them to actually pay themselves a salary that they would actually like. What they end up doing is, hey, I'll just take distributions at the end. But one of the things that he talks about in the book is the benefits of actually building your business in a way that your compensation is built in. And when your compensation is built in, it gives you a ton of benefits when it comes down to whether you want to sell the business, whether you want to bring on investors, and it gives you a lot more clarity and insight to understand how is the business really doing. Now, I'm not going to tell you all the details that he talked about because I think he did a really good job on that topic. The other thing that it talks about is building with the exit in mind. Again, when you're building your business, there are some things that people just don't think about. They think about just kind of getting the business together, but there are some very key things you want to keep in mind when you're building your business. And one of those is thinking about the exit. Because at some point, you will want to do something else, or at some point you may want to sell the business, or at some point you may want to pass the business on to someone else, whether it be your family, if it's a legacy business, or whether it be the other owners. And there are some things that he talks about in the book that really help you get the right mindset about what are things I need to make sure that I have in place so when the time comes, I can exit, and I can exit well. The other thing that he talked about was, this fear that people have of taxes. And what I liked that the way he talked about it was, really helping people understand is, if you're walking in fear of paying taxes, you're probably going to make some bad financial decisions. So definitely pay attention to the things that he talks about there. I think he lays out some things I think that are some really good ways to think about it. Now, I will say there are some things in there that he says that I don't completely agree with. Like one of the ones he talks about is like how, the amount of money you pay in taxes, typically is a sign of, I guess you said a reverse way of looking at it. The amount of money you pay in taxes can be a sign of your success because it means that your business is growing. It means that your business is profitable. On the surface, I can understand where he was coming from. But I think as you get more advanced, there's some things about that I'm like, there may be some caveats to that. But all in all, I do think he gives a good perspective about, being not fearing taxes and really not building your business to save on taxes, but building your business to achieve what your real goals are. And if you're really achieving your real goals and you have some of the other things that he talks about in place, even when you get a larger tax bill, you'll be able to pay it with no problem because you have the right things in place. Something else he talked about was, ideas about smart financial metrics. Now, this one becomes a very important one because there are a lot of people who, they're just kind of running their business and they're just kind of hoping and praying things go well. But he does a really good job of talking about financial metrics. Now, financial metrics is one of those areas where in my firm, we end up helping a lot of businesses really clarify what are the key financial metrics they should be monitoring and watching on a regular, consistent basis. And as they do that, what it does is it helps them stay on track with the business and helps them make sure the business is headed in the right direction. Now, the other thing I will say, here's my recommendation of how to get more value out of this book. Once you start getting into like chapter 6 and the later chapters, I will tell you, for a person who probably is new to accounting and finance, some of that stuff may be very, very complicated to understand. So I would recommend that, you actually, if you're going to read this book, is once you start getting to chapter 6 is to really slow down. Read those sections a lot slower because there's some things he starts talking about in there, like some things about like valuations and, some more detailed, complex things, and you won't be able to grasp it. I mean, I would say even myself being a finance person, like there's some of it I had to go back and I had to, re-listen to because I listened to the audio version. Now, I will say normally I'm when I used to read physical books, I was a speed reader. Now I do more audio listening and I'm more of a speed listener. Like whenever I listen to a book, like I have to turn it up to 2x the normal speed because if it's anything slower than that, typically the book is I'm gonna get distracted and I'm not gonna be able to pay attention. So I'm used to being a speed reader. Whereas even when I got to some of the topics that he talks about after chapter 6, I had to slow it down a little bit just to make sure I was following along. And I will say, if you have either a digital version of the book or a physical version, probably being able to look at some of the diagrams and the charts that he referenced, if accounting and finance is not your background, it will be helpful. Now, for myself, I was able to grasp some of it because it's what I do for a living. So I was able to follow along with some of it in listening. But if it's new to you, you probably want to slow down in your reading. Maybe, read it in smaller sections and also get something you can physically see, whether that's the digital version or the hard copy. And the last thing I would say as a recommendation is to read this with a friend because there's a lot of concepts that he talks about in this book. And I definitely think that, you can get a lot of value out of this book. But I think you're going to get a lot more value if there's someone you can have a conversation with as you're reading this book. I mean, and like I said, as you some of these concepts are going to be new to you if accounting and finance is not your core background. And I will say, even if you are an accounting and a finance professional, some of it still may be a new perspective to you. So I would say it probably would be in your best interest is to read it with other people, read it with a friend. That way you can take your time and you can kind of slowly move through it and you can get the insights that you need. So that's my book review on that book. So I think that, like I said, overall, I think it's a great book. I gave you some recommendations on how to get the best value out of it. And thanks for tuning in. We will continue to do this as we read more and more books because one of the things that I try to do even myself is to stay on top of like new insights and learning from so many different things. And I would say typically I can probably get through maybe 85% of a book in like, in a weekend. And so there are more books that I'm reading every single week. So my goal is to bring you more insights on the book reviews. And if there's a book that you really want us to talk about, send me a note on LinkedIn or, leave us a message on Facebook, wherever you find us. Leave us a message, let us know, and we'll see what we can do about checking that book out. So thanks for tuning in, and give a special shout out to our sponsors.
We get it. Keeping track of your finances can seem pretty overwhelming when you're running a business. Achieving your financial goals in business should not be a guessing game. That's why it pays to work with someone that can take a hard look at your financial numbers and not add more stress to the balancing act of running your business. The T.O. Turner Group will provide a clear and concise explanation to your financial standing. The T.O. Turner Group will simplify finance and help you make smarter money decisions in your business.